CD and then I didn't wait for him and I didn't want to Bruce. I apologize. No, fine. You were in deep conversation. I was just running ahead.
That's what I spend most of the rest of the doing is trying to get donations to various churches in the area.
Can you go just tell Tim what I just told you?
Okay. Well, I guess we asked that lady, Sue McDonald's, right? Her coffee was too hot. Yeah, it's amazing. Actually, from either of her residents, I did that. Well, yeah, I have to agree with you. I like our policy. I read this is where you got your spoiler. It's a fact. It is the center. Yep.
Hello, Donna. I've been having a little too much fun with this.
Good for you.
I actually got turned down on the volume.
Just realize that if you whisper,
Yes, it does.
I think I should give Jen my old microphone. So we're perfect for her.
I've already been turned down once tonight.
I'll call the meeting of the Montague Township Board of Education for November 23rd, 2020 to order. Mr. Baumann. Here. Mr. Breslin.
Here.
Ms. Caramucci.
Here.
Ms. Crispin.
Here.
Mr. Underwood. Here. Mr. Cooper. Here. And I am present. Mr. Capone is here, as is Algina Renner. Please rise for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The mission of the Montague Township School District is to provide the best educational experience and opportunities resources allow in order to realize the potential of every child. In accordance with the New Jersey Sunshine Law, legal notice of this meeting has been posted on the official bulletin board at the school and advertised in the New Jersey Herald and the Sunday New Jersey Herald. Announcement of executive session. Be it resolved that the Montague Township Board of Education recess and proceed to executive session to discuss personnel matters and legal issues. Action may or may not be taken. Motion to open executive session at 6:31 p.m.
I'll make it.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Caramucci, second by Mr. Briston. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're in executive session. We'll entertain a motion to close executive session at 7 p.m.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Dowd, second by Ms. Christman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to reopen the regular meeting at 7 p.m.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Breslin, second by Mr. Bell. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. CSA report.
So 2 weeks ago, the data from the state said that we were moving into orange. The data at the end of this week says that we were moving to red. And they're expecting this to be something that continues to increase over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And so based on that information, based on our staffing outlook, the decision was made to close due to the impact of Thanksgiving, the winter break, and 2 weeks past that from a quarantine time is the January 18th date that's been provided. So at this point in time, we'll be reviewing to see when we drop back out of the red and orange to determine what the appropriate time frame would be to come back with in-person learning. You have HVAC requests. You have 2. There was a request for 12, I believe, that Mr. Stewart can address with you.
We 5 of them, yeah. We had gotten two quotes back, one quote and then plus another one, that was it. A lot of them don't want to because of the COVID, or they just don't have the time to get back to us.
So the 2 that you have are not comparable because the second quote that we did get is not for the in-depth review that the first one provided. So we either have to make a determination between those, or you have to wait for these companies to be freed up to identify their opportunity to come in to review the systems and provide their additional quotes. One of the things that we continue to have a conversation about is facts and making sure that we're providing accurate information. And throughout the last year, we've been having a lot of conversation in reference to performance. And so I thought that, again, this is probably an important point to bring up when we're talking about student services and how it is that we're providing and what opportunities that we're providing. There was somebody had brought up the U.S. News report in reference to where we send our high school students to High Point. And within that, they were ranked in the 68th percentile in New Jersey, the 69th percentile as far as college preparedness curriculum, 42nd percentile for math and English proficiency, 10th percentile as far as math and English performance, and this is for the performance of minority students, special education, or students that are free and reduced, and 50th percentile for graduation in the state. Now, the key element that we continue to talk about is serving all students. Our mission statement talks about meeting the interests of all students. The number of our percentage of free and reduced meal students has obviously been a conversation point recently, and where we're looking at on a yearly basis, half to 2/3 of our students that we send on fall into that criteria. Okay? The majority of our students are being serviced in that 10th percentile, according to the U.S. News report. Okay, so I made the point once before about the fact that if you're going to consider a small select group of students, okay, AP students, that's fine if your students are in the AP class. But for this board, the decision had been in the past that we were looking to service all students. Okay, so bottom 10% of New Jersey is that performance. And if you look at the national rank on the same report, it's also in the bottom 10% nationally. So I think that's something that, again, we'll continue to talk about, data and what it is and how it is that we're going to service students. But I feel like we've gotten off track and we're talking about everything except educating students recently. And I just wanted to kind of bring this back as far as a key point about there's responsibility of this board to serve pre-K to 12th grade students. Okay, that is what our responsibility is. And that brings me to the next point, which is we did have a communications meeting. We had talked about having another one. This has been something that we've talked about, I think, extensively about the fact that we have presented information, accurate information, facts, only to have people provide this information and have that be spread on a larger scale. And so at the communications committee, we actually put out, and we had that packet that we put on our website. And the understanding, because again, this was a group across the board as far as different positions they took, was that they were going to share that information within the community. It's my understanding from having followed up that that did not occur. And so, the political motivations that we have here as far as not spreading true information about the school and providing this information continues to be something that plagues us. Whether it's the high point numbers, whether it's this kind of conversation, we continue to play this game of shoot the messenger, as opposed to looking at here are the facts of the circumstance and what are we going to do as far as addressing this. Which brings us to the food program. So at the last meeting, we had a discussion in reference to what we have been doing. And what we had been doing was delivering to our free and reduced population to make sure that our neediest students were fed. The decision was then made to have a grab and go program. And so the results that we have from making that change of no longer delivering and now providing for grab and go, the numbers past the first week, the first week that we had, the numbers went from a total of 85 students down to 46. And that's been relatively consistent over the last 2 weeks. The percentage, as I talked at the last meeting, of students that are free and reduced that are being serviced, only 14 of the 46 students have been serviced under this new program the way that this is being done. This is a travesty that we're neglecting the students that are in the most need of our school. So, this has been something that we've gone through. There have been people in the community that have said, well, I'll help out, I'll pick up food and deliver. And we tried to explain to them that that's not permissible, that you cannot pick up for other people, that we have it in writing from the New Jersey Department of Agriculture, quoting the USDA. It's pretty straightforward as what it is that we're able to do. And we talked about the impact of staffing, the fact that we have one part-time person that currently oversees this program. So at the last meeting, after we had discussed what this was, we were talking about what your options are. So again, currently you have one part-time person. You could make that person full-time. You could hire another part-time person. Okay, and this is something, those are basically the two options that you have on the table that can be done with any kind of reasonable time frame moving forward. This has gotten to the point where, again, some of the information that was provided, I guess there's now people saying that they've provided expired food. Ms. Rekovic and Mr. Stewart are both here. They both check that on a daily basis. I don't know if either one of you want to comment or both of you want to comment.
Food, the milks, everything's are checked at every time. Every time we do everything, we check everything daily when we give out food, and there's nothing that's expired. If it's expired, we do not put it out.
We would never give expired bills or something that's expired to a student. That's just crazy. You check it, as soon as it comes in, you check it. As soon as you pack it, you check it. And I did receive any emails or phone calls
So many of you probably received, if not all of you, received a call from Representative Gottheimer. Representative Gottheimer, based on the misinformation he was provided, we had a phone call on Thursday. He had set up 3 meetings with me at the beginning of October to have this conversation, and then did not call during that time frame. We did not keep those meetings. And when we spoke, he was actually encouraging the same thing that some of the parents were, which was give the food to people that it is not permissible to give it to. I sent him the email from the Department of Agriculture, and we have not heard a response since. This is something that I think is concerning for 2 points. First is that the conversation with Representative Gottheimer was based on this concept that we should be servicing all students. He had his free disposition that he came in with based on what he had read and what he was told by alleged parents, even though we're aware that some of the people that have told him were not parents and were masquerading as so. But the thing that I really think needs to be highlighted is his big push has been discussing the difference between clawing back federal tax dollars to New Jersey. That this has been a priority, and he's described other states as moocher states, states that don't put in their fair share. And so, in that case, I sent him a response to that because 40 of the 50 states are considered moocher states, according to his definition. And based on the Montague Township School District, he would describe us under the same criteria as a moocher school district. And people having free and reduced lunch, Mr. Gottheimer's description, if he's going to be consistent, is going to be that those people are moochers or on Social Security. So this is not something that I felt was appropriate. I don't think that that's a reflection of our community. I actually think that this is something that we had a plan that was based on the staffing that was provided, and we executed that plan and did the things that were needed to make sure that people had the food that they needed. At this point in time, like I said, I think that you have 2 choices. You can either hire additional staff if you're going to run both programs, okay? And you would have the ability to do that. The second is that you choose how it is that we're going to do this. Again, I don't believe that the current decision is the right one. I don't think that making sure that people that don't qualify for free and reduced are able to pick up food should be a priority over people that have been identified as free and reduced meals families. And if you're going to do both, you have to understand that the increase in the number of people that are potentially served does require us to adjust as far as the staffing that exists. It does not alleviate any meals that are unclaimed, but the call that he made, the article that Representative Gottheimer put forward said, not a penny of local funds or not a nickel of local funds. And that may be true from a federal dollar standpoint, but it's not true from a board perspective, because whatever it is that you're going to spend on that, you're going to have to pick up the difference. At the last meeting, I felt it was important to do some fact checking as well. Ms. Holstein has said that when she was here, that she worked on the pre-K program that we currently have. That was a comment, and so that can't possibly be true. This grant was not available until 2019. She also made the comment at the very last meeting that this was started by a teacher through a grant, and that's where this program came from. The grant that she's talking about was $10,000 for materials. The staffing that was provided was 2 full-time staff members totaling $200,000 plus. I don't know how you can compare that to a $750,000 state-awarded grant that provides for all staffing, all instructional materials for our students. Okay, the original program, you could argue, is not necessarily fiscally responsible if you're taking a $200,000 loss to provide those services compared to the current program that we have now, which is fully state-funded. But again, this goes back to facts versus fiction. And, you know, the continued problem that we have is getting accurate information out to people in a way that they're understanding that the things that are being said that they're getting off Facebook are false. We have been fiscally responsible. We have started new programs for students to expand their learning opportunities. We've provided technology for all students. I continue to look at the things that we say and the things that are done, and you know where it is that we were to where it is that we are now. And there's not a single area that you can look at that is not better from 3 years ago. Not a single aspect. But from that, as we continue to move forward, this is something that I can't stress enough. Okay? There seems to be this concept that you know, there's information being circulated about how things are going to go back to the way they were, which is fewer opportunities for students, less fiscal responsibility. It's absolutely absurd if you're talking about meeting the needs of all students upon it. So I just want to kind of reiterate, I won't be bullied. Okay, I can't be bought. I will continue to work in the best interest of all Montague students, like we have for the past 3+ years. And I think really, as a board, we have to think and answer the question of, who do you work for? Who are you responsible to? That's all I have.
There's no SBA report. Unaware of any correspondence. Whoops. Sorry about that. There is no SBA report. There is no correspondence. Oh, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. Thank you. There was an email from Amanda Stolmeyer raising concerns about communication relative to, I guess, sharing information about COVID and the way that school is either reopening or not opening, virtual schooling, and things of that nature, and asking to be made aware of a plan of action the school board intends to prevent issues of communication problems in the future.
I think Ms. Rekovic can speak to this.
So I told her the next day to see this email on Sunday. I made her aware that she chose the virtual option during the summer when the survey was going out. I let her know that there are days that she can opt in. She said she never looked on our website, so she wasn't aware of the dates. And I made her aware of the dates, so she emailed me or called me and let me know she wasn't opted for her child.
Well, thank you for addressing that.
But again, I think the key aspect, just to make sure that everybody hears that she was addressed, she spoke to someone during the summer and made a choice.
I think the important aspect of what Donna just said is there's information on the website. You have to look as opposed to just waiting to be called. Anything else on correspondence? Approval of minutes. Be it resolved at the recommendation of the superintendent that the Montague Township Board of Education approve the minutes of November 9th, 2020. I'll entertain a motion. Motion. Second. Motion by Mr. Palma, seconded by Mr. Tooper. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Palma? Yes. Mr. Bristol? Yes. Ms. Carabucci?
Yes.
Ms. Chrisman?
Yes.
Mr. Underwood? Mr. Tooper? Yes. And yes. Motion carries. Public session, agenda items only. agenda items only. Public comment is invited on all matters pertaining to the school district. All participants shall be permitted 4 minutes to speak and shall state their name, place of residence, and group affiliation if appropriate. Board meetings are a meeting of the board conducted in public, not a meeting of the public conducted in the presence of the board. The board uses the public comment period as an opportunity to listen to citizen concerns. Please be aware that not all issues brought to the board meeting will be resolved this evening. Rather, the board will, in appropriate cases, delegate the authority to investigate the matter to the superintendent of boards designate. Please let the record reflect that the BOE does not endorse your comments, nor will the BOE be held liable for comments you made by a staff member or other person, which the staff member or the other person may consider defamatory and or libelous, as that individual retains all rights to pursue any legal remedies against you. I'll entertain a motion to open public comment at 7:21 p.m.
Motion. Second.
I think I heard Mr. Baumann as a motion, and I definitely heard Mr. Tuford as a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public comment, agenda items only. Agenda items only. Just open. Hi, Ms. Vogel, how are you?
Good evening, Denise Vogel, 228 Old Chimney Ridge Road, Montague, New Jersey. This is a learning process for me. I just had a question about F2 through, I believe, 6, and some additional ones where there were treasurer reports and also secretary reports that were going to be reapproved because they had audits that needed to be corrected. I just wanted to know if there was an explanation for that. Thank you.
Sir. So the abbreviated version is that we designate an auditor at the beginning of each academic year. And periodically, those auditors go through paperwork that is submitted to them by various, primarily financial folks. Mr. Gumexstein, our treasurer, our secretary. When there are issues, whether they be mathematical or whether it be that a particular expenditure was in the wrong column, the auditors identify that. Because those reports are reviewed and approved by the board, when there are changes proposed by the auditor, the board then has to go back and reapprove those amended reports. You're very welcome.
Article C 127B Hemlock Hill. I'm going to be addressing some of the comments that were made during the CFSA's report. Mr. Capone, your resume and easily searchable employment history should have given every board member the fullest scrutiny and due diligence if they had done so in 2017, which included Mr. Plotky.
This has absolutely nothing to do with an agenda
It
item.
does
So
have to
move on.
do with the CSA's comments during his business, during his CSA.
I didn't hear him talk at all about his
It's all
history.
related, if you allow, please. The public of the community overwhelmingly voted last November 2019 and this November 2020 to see board members who are listening to the parents and concerned residents of Montague, which we continually be hearing throughout media, throughout personal contacts, and throughout the newspaper, that there are people that are not feeling that they are being heard. Once again, Montague School District is in the crosshairs of a negative news issue, the food program. Mr. Capone, your comments point fingers to little concerns of parents and residents with your claims of their false comments. Your comments stifle and prevent meaningful and open communication with the public and have for 3 years. I'm going to go directly to what you said. My comments did not talk about me at all in my last public comment at the last board meeting. And I would like that corrected in the minutes. Ms. Chesky and Ms. Marion did start the pre-K program. We never had one here before that. Whether it was a $10,000 grant, a $20,000 grant, or your $700,000 grant, they started the program. The program grew from there under both Mrs. Hodge and then the interim superintendent before you. And I'm not knocking that you have continued the program, but they should also be acknowledged. Your job is to create a successful food delivery plan. Using the staff that you have that is on a virtual schedule and already on paid payroll, I am asking on behalf of the public outcry that you create a plan to fully carry both programs for our children and our parents, and stop pointing the finger back at the public. Find a solution, make it work with what we have, not hiring more.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close public comment at 7:26 p.m.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Palma, second by Ms. Christie. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Donna, please have the record reflect Mr. Toofer excused himself at 7:26. We'll entertain a motion to block vote items A1 and A2.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Balma, second by Ms. Scaramouche. Any discussion, questions, or comments?
So, Mr. President, just for A1, just a clarification question. Is that the resolution that Danielle had requested and placed on the agenda at the last meeting? It is, okay. And then for A2, just a clarification that a vote for A2 is a vote to adopt the amendments in their entirety.
It's no motion for either of these. This is the first reading.
Yes.
Right? So it requires an affirmative vote tonight.
Right.
Then if there's any discussion, then an affirmative vote at a subsequent meeting, at which point it would become our policy.
Okay, but for the A2, if that is passed on first reading tonight, if it's passed on second reading, that would then constitute, the second reading vote would then constitute voting for the amendments.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I'm not sure what the question is.
Well,
there are two readings.
Yes,
Right?
right.
Tonight's the first.
Right. Okay, but clarification for me, I have recommended these amendments, and I just want to make sure that tonight, when I vote for first reading, that's the first step toward the adoption of these amendments.
It is the first step towards the adoption of these.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Are we gonna read them?
I'm sorry?
Are you gonna read the new policies so that we can see them and hear them? We're not out there.
No, I'm not going to read the policies that were distributed to the board or otherwise disseminated.
So what's the purpose of
They'll be available between this reading if it's adopted, if it's a yes vote, and the next meeting, I presume. Contact the school, you can open them, they'll be available. Candidly, ask Danielle, ask Paul, I'm sure they have extra copies.
So again, I mean, the first policy that we're discussing, the intention is to limit informational items being shared through the on-call system. We've discussed this as far as the policy committee, and again, that's something that it's always been used in that manner. And I think that's going to be a real problem if you're going to eliminate informational items out of the on-call system and only use it for emergency items.
As to item A2, I'll just indicate that the reason that this information isn't provided generally was based upon my experience 4 and 5 years ago, where the agenda would be done earlier as Paul has requested. And at virtually, actually I would say at every single meeting, there were last minute changes, corrections, and other information that was exchanged, which made it, I think, more difficult to follow and be prepared for meetings because things were flying at you, literally being received at the table because they couldn't be put together early enough to satisfy that requirement. So we've got a motion and a second on items A1 and A2.
Can I make a comment? As for the policy, the first one, I don't think it's an intention of eliminating communication, because I've always said that we need more communication, but I think it needs to be modified as to what is allowed on the all-call system and what is not, because I don't believe that picking and choosing certain votes and calling board members out to the entire district is appropriate. So maybe this can be modified in order to say something to that effect, but by no means am I trying to lessen communication in the district.
It says right here, if this is approved, it says the board prohibits the use of a district automated notification system for general information, public announcements regarding district and board activities, or any other announcements that do not qualify as time sensitive and urgent. That to me is restricting communication.
It needs prior board approval.
So you want to approve something communication-wise to the public.
Like I said, this needs to be tweaked. I'm not saying I'm not saying go with everything that's in here. All I'm saying is I think it's inappropriate what happened a few months back, and I think it needs to be addressed.
Mr. President, we've been through a year of things that I've never seen before. I've never seen a board member criticize a front office secretary based on her performance because they were dealing with a board member's friend. Even after we went through and said that person showed up 5 minutes past dismissal. I've never seen that because that's unethical behavior. I've never seen someone vote not to renew an entire staff, okay, claiming that it was a protest vote, okay? I've never seen that. In the time I've been here, I know it happened before I got here, we never had failed to pass a budget, okay, until this year. I've never seen people vote against curriculum for children, but that's happened this year. I've never seen someone go through and say, I'm going to vote to cancel the bus contracts, but I don't have a solution of how we're going to transport children. Vote yes to canceling the contracts and no to any. I've never seen that. So we can go through a lot of things that maybe we've never seen, okay? I feel like, again, there are things that we continue to talk about. How do you communicate information to the public in an effective way, okay? More than a year ago, Mark and I had a conversation about getting on chat, okay, to try and be able to answer information. The problem is people don't come and ask questions. So we don't know what those questions are. Like I said, Gottheimer has gotten more calls about this than we have in the last week. They don't call us, but they'll call their congressman and think that that's going to fix it. So there is a problem with communication. The issue is how do you go about fixing it? I understand what your concern is. And again, I think I've said this to you on other times. I hope that there's part of it of saying, I didn't like being addressed. I didn't like that vote brought to people's attention. Okay, but maybe at the time saying, maybe I shouldn't have voted not to renew the entire staff. Okay, I feel like there's probably a happy medium there. We've talked about communication amongst the board, that if you have questions, that we should be talking prior to get you those answers. That if you don't know what it is that you're doing, that you should be reaching out to get those answers. Not going to somebody in the community and asking them what their opinion is, because they don't know. We've talked as a board the fact that you sit in executive session You have information that nobody else has. You've been elected as representatives to make the best decisions for the children of this district. That's what our responsibility is. So, this is something that's now drug on since May, okay? And I think everybody understands your position, but as it reads right now, you want to restrict communication. And again, this goes back to the same thing that we're dealing with food service. You decided to make a change to the food service and eliminate a program and then come back to the next meeting and say, I didn't know what I was doing. This is the same kind of thing. You want to eliminate communication and then not have us have the ability to communicate things except in an emergency circumstance. But you want to increase communication. It's counterintuitive. So, you're talking about this as saying, okay, if that's the one driver, if that's what we're talking about, is that single vote, you didn't like that? I'm going to use this as a different example. There's all types of media. There's the all-call system. There's a Facebook page. There's a Twitter. Okay. There's all different kinds of ways that these things can be communicated, and you're targeting one system for the all-call system.
I don't agree with the Facebook either.
This isn't limiting. Okay, and certainly not something that, again, it's factually correct. And that's where, again, I continue to go back to the fact that, okay, as a district, we should be putting facts out to our community so they can understand what's happening. Saying I don't like the facts of the situation doesn't change the facts.
Then why are we not putting every single vote out there discussing? Why are we picking and choosing which votes to put out there?
Because I think that there are things that are more interesting to parents than others. I don't think they really care about F1 through F16. Okay, that's my prerogative. Okay, because I'm the administrator of the district. So I think that that's important for parents to know if every staff member that votes not to come back. I think it's important for them to know that the budget didn't pass. And because the budget didn't pass, and again, these are the things that continue to come up, right? I think it was 2 meetings ago, Paul asked why we couldn't use preschool funds to hire an individual. And the answer was because you didn't pass a budget. And because you didn't pass a budget, the county office determined that you're not allowed to have that position. So now we're 8 months later having the same conversation, and to be somebody that voted not to have a budget, to be somebody that voted not to agree with the RIF, right? Which is, again, that's not fiscally responsible in my mind. Okay, the position's been eliminated because you've given up authority on the budget. Okay, that would have created a hole within our budget right off the bat if that had not passed. And now we have to have this conversation again about why you can't use funds and go through this whole history again. It's bad practice. The goal of the board and the board's responsibility, we've been through. You make policy. You set goals. Okay, those are your jobs, right? If this is an important policy that we want to limit communication, we can do that. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's in the best interest. I think we should be trying to find how do we communicate more and more accurate information. That's the position that I would take.
Mr. President, I just take 2 minutes to respond to that. Is just to give the rest of the story on the budget that keeps coming up over and over again. We were given 1.5 hours to review a budget of $9.6 million. And I will not vote for a $9.6 million budget with 1.5 hours to review it and vote on it. That's not going to happen. So also, the second part, the other minute, is I do not believe the all-call system, and right now our website should be used for punitive purposes. And the wording that's still on the website says that the 4 of us who voted the way we did, voted to discontinue the delivery system, which is absolutely false. We did not vote to discontinue any kind of a food delivery system. We voted to be all-inclusive, not to, and the last motion that I made, the last meeting, 4 people, I don't know why, they abstained from that vote. And that's why we didn't institute it. And at the end, in the new business or whatever, I'm gonna make that motion again, and hopefully we'll have a different response to that motion that I made at the last meeting. Thank you.
It's fine. Just so we're clear, I think that every single person who abstained indicated that the reason that they did so, I certainly was one of them, was because there were economic consequences to making that vote that we did not, at that time, have the answers to. If we don't have the answers tonight, I'm abstaining again. If we have the answers tonight, perhaps I'll change my vote to a yes. Perhaps I'll change my vote to a no. I don't like the idea of a no vote for the food process, but I'm also not going to spend $100,000 of senior taxpayer money for where it turns out that 25,000 of it is actually going for good purposes, and the other 75 is being thrown out because people don't pick it up or people don't whatever. So I needed more information at the last meeting. I still need, as we sit here at this particular moment, I need more information yet. But you feel free to make that motion. Any other discussion with regard to items A1 and A2? I actually have a question. Is it possible to vote yes on the first reading and then modify it between the first reading and the second?
Yeah. The purpose is the first reading is to announce it to the public. And any comments they send in, and the board has a chance to review the policy. That's what the second reading was about.
So Danielle could clean this up just to make it more like what I think you want it to be than what perhaps it is in writing between the first and the second reading.
Yes, that's the purpose.
There's also, if you read the policy, it says they should be reviewed by your board attorney prior to board adoption.
Well, that would
If
potentially be between the first and second reading.
yes.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Brisson,
Yes.
Ms. Scaramucci,
No.
Ms. Christman,
Yes.
Mr. Underwood, Mr. Tuford.
Yes.
I'm a yes on A1, and I'm a no on A2. Motion carries. It will be on a second reading. Mr. Cohen, I would ask you to please forward that to Mr. Camigno's office, both of those proposed policies, and ask them for input and comment with regard to both.
Mr. President, is it premature for me to make a motion to ask Mr. Camigno to attend our next board meeting to discuss this as well as other issues? I would like him to be present. I have yet to see him at any of our board meetings. So can I make a motion that Mr. Camigno?
It would be an executive session, but I suppose if that's your desire.
Mhm.
Why don't we do that under new business? Can we do that under new
Sure.
business? Next, items F1 to F17. I'd ask for a block vote, please.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Baumann, second by Mr. Tupper. Comments, questions, concerns, items F1 through F17.
Just a clarification, and I know it was discussed when Denise spoke on this particular matter, but these adjustments, may I ask, who prepared the adjustments? Was it, I think, like you had said, I think the auditor, so Nisabachia and Company prepared these adjustments?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any idea what the magnitude is, what the financial impact is for those adjustments? Do we have an actual list that, and I don't want to hold up the vote tonight, but can we get a list from Nisabachia and Company as to what they are recommending the adjusted so we can see the financial impact as opposed to voting for the final product? Can I make a motion to the right?
Mr. Tupper showing it to you.
Did you read it? You have it.
It shows the financial impact.
It's the list of the adjustments.
F3, for F3.
F3. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Well, they were all in your packet.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baumann.
Yes.
Mr. Breslin.
Yes.
Ms. Caramucci.
Yes.
Ms. Christman.
Yes.
Mr. Underwood. Mr. Tooper.
Yes.
And yes. Motion carries 7-0. That's the items F1 to F7. I'll entertain a motion with regard to items P1 and P2. P1 is on your regular agenda. P2 is in the addendum agenda.
Second.
I didn't hear the motion, sorry.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Baumann, second by Mrs. Caramucci. Really likes that microphone. Any discussion with regard to items P1 and P2? Hearing none, Mr. Baumann.
Yes.
Mr. Breslin.
Yes.
Ms. Caramucci.
Yes.
Ms. Christman.
Yes.
Mr. Underwood. Mr. Tooper.
Yes.
And yes. Items P1 and P2 carry 7-0. Public session. Public comment is invited on all matters pertaining to the school district. All participants shall be permitted 4 minutes to speak and shall state their name, place of residence, and group affiliation if appropriate. Board meetings are a meeting of the board conducted in public, not a meeting of the public conducted in the presence of the board. Board uses the public comment period as an opportunity to listen to citizen concerns. But please be aware that not all issues brought to a board meeting will be resolved this evening. Rather, the board will, in appropriate cases, delegate the authority to investigate the matter to the superintendent or his designee. Please let the record reflect that the BOE does not endorse your comments, nor will the BOE be held liable for comments you might make about a staff member or other person, which the staff member or other person may consider defamatory and/or libelous, as that individual retains all rights to pursue any legal remedies against you. I'll entertain a motion to open public comment at 7:47 p.m.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Baumann, second by Ms. Christman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Any items? Yes.
Martha Stephen from 27B Hemlock. This is regarding A1. Danielle made excellent points. She's tried to make these points several times in previous meetings regarding the use of the all-call system. The use of the all-call system was extremely inappropriate, such as the Facebook comments that are on the page today, which is, to my knowledge, not an authorized Facebook page by the school board. It has not been passed in a resolution that the CSA is supposed to have its own private Facebook page. We do operate a school board website, which is where the communication, I believe, is authorized to be taking place. That's something that we need to look into. Regarding A1, needs to reflect that all call will not be used by any school administrators to publicly target an elected official who exercised their due diligence and practiced their right as a board member to vote the way that they saw fit. Mr. Capone, your continued demeaning finger pointing and comments are counterproductive for fostering meaningful relations with the board and the public, and I'm going to encourage you to try to change that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Any other public comments? Sorry. Mr. Krebs.
Correct, old Jimmy Ridge Road. I noticed the meeting tonight is being live streamed on YouTube. That was not advertised 4 hours prior to me. I didn't see it. It was never on your website. How are people supposed to know? I have been live streaming at the past 2 meetings, my own volition, to help you guys get the word out, or the true word out, which you're speaking to the community. Also, I think the lack of allowing the public to call in is stifling the public comments session. I think at least if you're going to use it, you're going to, you should at least open the meeting public participation through the phone to let people speak. And with this COVID thing going on, people people are afraid to come to meetings. I think you take that into consideration too. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Any other public participation? I'll entertain a motion to close public comment at 7:50.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tuber. Second, Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public comment is closed. Unfinished business. So I have some. I had the great displeasure of having to speak to representatives from the county office. Not that the phone conversation was pleasurable, because it was fine, but I didn't really enjoy the, I guess, being put in the position of trying to explain why this board, relative to the HVAC program and COVID issues, has become as, and please take this from the good place that I'm trying to send it from, as incredibly dysfunctional as it is. To put it very, very curtly, we need a plan. We need to be able to tell the county something. We need Mr. Capone to be able to tell the county something about when and how children will be able to return to this building safely. So far, except for asking for more quotes and more quotes and more quotes, more quotes, there's been no proposal. Actually, I take that back. There was one proposal. Open the windows. It was 34 degrees when I got in my car this morning. It might have hit 50. We can't open the windows. That's not a plan. Right now, if that's the plan, this building is 100% virtual until May, maybe. I mean, I don't have a child in the school. I don't. Some of you do. And I mean, we've sat through at least, I think, the last 3 meetings talking about potential options and alternatives and plans. And I get that some of them are really expensive, and some of them will take a really long time. But what's the plan? Anybody? There's no plan. We need to come up with something, whether it be taking there are 30 rooms in the building, take the worst 10, get them analyzed, get them fixed. Then we've got 10 rooms that we can actually put kids in safely. Then we take the next 10, do the same thing. Then we do the next 10, and we do the same thing. That's at least a concept. It's a plan. I really did not, I mean, again, they were very pleasant. But having to try to explain how this board has become so dysfunctional, and why nobody can get out of their own way when it comes to trying to make a decision relative to COVID and taking care of this building. We're not in a position to level the building and start over. I mean, the fact of the matter is that would it have taken a long time to do the whole building? Yep. Would it have cost a lot of money? Yep. Did we have the money? Yep. I'll tell you right now, the only reason why I voted no is because I wanted to be in a position to, if I thought that there was any glimmer, to be able to reimpose the vote, recall the vote, try to vote it over, It's the only reason why I voted against each of these plans. I don't understand. I'm supposed to be, they tell me, right? I'm supposed to be the leader. What are we doing? We need to do something. We can't just sit here and kick at this point, it's going to be April and we're going to be opening the windows. And we will have done nothing until then. So, since I voted no previously, I'm going to make a motion to recall the concept of hiring the engineering company to evaluate the 1/3, the worst 30% of the rooms in this building. Give us a plan to repair those rooms immediately. I make that motion. Is there any other discussion? Any other concepts? Any comments? Anything?
Mr. President, a question. We did receive 2 other quotes, which were substantially less than the $135,000 figure that we were given by the architect. Can we just objectively look at the other 2 quotes to see if they might satisfy the requirements at hand?
I think you're confused. The first one was the architectural plans to upgrade the HVAC system and the filtration system. Okay, that's what that architectural plan was. The second one you received was to do extensive testing on 10 classrooms to see what the air quality was. And the third one was not to do extensive testing, basic testing. So it's 3 completely separate things. They have nothing in common.
Can we go back to the other 2, number 2 and number 3, and ask them to compare apples and apples so we can see if the $135,000 is a reasonable fee or an unreasonable fee? That was not my intent when I supported getting additional estimates. I expected us to have estimates that would enable us as fiscally minded board members to see if the taxpayers are getting the bang for their buck. I don't know if $135,000 is a reasonable fee. And surely there are other companies out there with the same expertise as our architect to be able to do that.
The $135,000 fee was not an evaluation only of the building, it was also preparing the bid package to get the work done.
Okay, so we
But
need,
the problem is, what standard are we trying to meet?
exactly.
Having a test done, okay, we'll have results, but what are we gonna compare it to? What is our goal? For how clean do we want the air? What turnover rate? The county seems to want us to do something, okay? Give us those standards. Tell us what it has to be, and we'll get bids on what it takes to upgrade to that.
Aren't the standards listed by the state of New Jersey? In the return to school, they had a 400-page document. I read those standards. It's listed there. They had specific requirements, attachments that could have been put on HVAC systems. They didn't have to replace whole systems. In this case, we had an evaluation done. So why isn't the amendment the motion you made last meeting, that was to evaluate the whole building, which made sense. This way we could open the building instead of just a third of the building. Isn't that what happened at the last meeting? So what happened with that proposal?
That's not what happened.
So you're talking about these 3 separate issues, 3 separate, completely separate. How confusing is that?
Okay, yes, very, very, very much so. Because Paul is pulling an architectural quote from now a month ago for the architectural plan to complete the project to do the renovation. Okay, that's what you're talking about for that number. The number that Glenn is talking about is the Edison Energy, which is a comprehensive review. That's what the motion is currently with a second to say that we're going to test the 10 classrooms, right, a third of the building, to identify roughly what we'd be looking at. And the additional quote was not comprehensive testing. And the other companies were not able or willing to come here, okay, within a 2-week period to get additional quotes that would reflect either one of those.
So, Mr. Capone, that was only the second option was the viable one?
Well, just to try to clarify, the initial option would be the whole building. We thought, there was discussion that it wouldn't be, nothing would be resolved until perhaps next fall, and it would be like $1 million.
Exactly.
And so what I proposed, again, recalling the vote from, I think it was the last meeting, was to spend about $15,000. Do basically the worst 1/3 of the rooms as a target, just to understand where we are now and what we would need to do to get where we need to be. It's not comparing apples to apples, as Paul seems to want to do, and I don't have a problem with that conceptually. But we need to know, where we're going to start. And because it's $1 million or so, I guess, more than $9 according to Charlie, if we were to actually authorize the bid package for $135,000, maybe it would be $300,000. Ultimately, we'll learn that it will be $300,000 to do the repair to that 1/3 that we're having tested. But at least at that point, there's a section or a portion of the building. Look, there's a portion of the building I think right now that everybody would pretty much agree is okay. There are sections of the building that everybody would agree are really definitely not. Those are the areas that we want to test, because the more that we can bring the very bad to okay, the more likely it is that the average overall is okay. Again, there are spots, that there may still be issues with. But if we open up enough of the building, then we can actually say, okay, this is our plan. We're going to open this third. We've already got this third over here, which is usable. So now we've got 2/3 of the building by, pick a date. I don't know what the date's going to be, whatever date they give us. Now we have a plan, or at least we can discuss having a plan. But not doing anything, in my view, is no longer acceptable. So, is there any other discussion with regard to essentially my recall? Is my recall in a second? It's to authorize the evaluation of 10 classrooms, which I think Mr. Capone has already identified which 10 they'll be. They are, I'll put in air quotes, the worst classrooms in the building, so that we know what we need to do moving forward to try and get them to be safe for our students.
I got a question. Who has declared that we couldn't open this year due to our HVAC system? What entity, what agency, what person?
Well, there was a
where did the directive come from?
There was a discussion by Mr. Capone with the board. Essentially ultimately it's his decision. He's the school administrator, it's his decision. But the discussion was shared with the board in terms of the prognostications of people from the government and otherwise about COVID, about how it transmits, the impact it could have on the students, and essentially safety factors. We know that, and this might go to what Ms. Vogel was asking about in terms of the actual criterion. We know that the teachers' unions, they have a number that they would like every school to be in. I don't know that we're going to hit. I don't know that it's possible with this plant, with this physical building. I don't know if it's possible for us to hit that number. But we're trying to get to a number that, between the number itself and the ionization, both of which we've talked about, both of which I think would be part of this plan. Again, lawyer, I'm an engineer, not admitted in the state of New Jersey. I don't know the rules here. Okay. I follow the guidance of professionals. You know, I don't make stuff up, and I don't make up facts, and I try very hard not to argue alternative facts or whatever verbiage you want to use. I would like for this building to be safe sometime with an alternative other than opening windows. I think that the best course, and now it is my opinion, I think that it would be the best course of action to do that. Have a proper analysis done, we can reduce some of the cost and some of the time by focusing our efforts. Once that's done, then we can talk about the rest of the building, whether it be in thirds, the whole rest of the building, whatever the case might be. But I think that we need that information, and we need to move. We need to do something. And I think that $15,000 to obtain that type of estimate information, hopefully, will be money well spent. That's why I'm making my motion.
And I agree with the concept, Mr. President, but the motion that I made, and you can correct me if this is wrong, was to get at least 3 quotes for an HVAC ventilation and filtration study for unit ventilators to determine indoor air quality assessment for ventilation and COVID best practices. Is that a motion that you are referring to that was passed unanimously during the last meeting?
That's not the motion that I am recalling tonight. I am recalling the motion that went down that called for hiring a specific contractor for $15,000 to do an evaluation.
Okay, and which contractor is that?
Edison Engineering. I want to go back to Dale's question. On August 31st, okay, this board made a determination to go 100% virtual. Okay, now, when we're talking about who has the authority to close the building, that's me. Okay, the decision that we've had as far as is based on staffing. It's based on risk. Okay, and so the last 2 meetings we've talked about the fact that the health department shared with us that we were moving to orange. We get the data a week before they release it publicly. Okay, so last week we knew that we were now in orange. Okay, so we made an adjustment. We had, again, this week's data coming that it's going to be on the cusp of red. Okay, when it hits orange, that's what they've recommended. That's what the governor did last year. He closed everything, all schools, when we hit orange. Okay, now we're expecting that this week's report is going to be red. It's at least orange. Okay, and from the health department, they said that they're expecting that from now in the next 2 weeks that we're going to see this just spiral up. Okay, that we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 weeks that this is really going to be red. Okay, so we made the decision. I made the decision based on looking at our staffing, based on looking at those circumstances, and again, be consistent that we have an indicator by which it is that we're going to be 100% remote. Okay, so the jump back to this conversation was that the board had put money away for AC. We had talked about that the window units are a safety concern. So we had money set aside for them. When this conversation turned to the ventilation overall, and we had some conversation in the spring as far as the ventilation and some of the areas not being the way that they needed to be, we went and to our architect, that the board has approved, said, what is the recommendation? Okay. The recommendation they're saying was at least per 30. But they said that our units do not run that, cannot run that. So what they recommended was MERV 10 with the ionization, and that was equivalent to MERV 13. So that's what we went out and collected, was saying, we have the money, you're going to be able to address the safety issue, you're going to be able to address the ventilation, you're going to be able to address the electrical system, you're going to be able to address the AC, and all of those components, that's what this project covers. So we went through the steps to have them figure out this is what it is. They figured out their bid, they figured out the timeline, and that's what they had put forward. So when we came here, and then the board has changed their opinion as far as not doing the project, okay? Now the county office is asking, what are you going to do? If we identify that there's an issue, which I don't think anybody's disputing, okay?
Actually, I don't know if we do have an issue, but we don't don't have a standard to go against.
Well, we know that it didn't meet, OSHA standards in the spring, that there were concerns then as far as that. But again, that was the conversation then. You can open the windows. That's the solution that they have, which is opening the windows in order to meet the OSHA standards.
This is not just Montague School though, correct? This is other school districts, this is not just Montague.
It's everywhere that has buildings these
Correct.
ages and ventilators, and this is a common problem,
Because
state,
of COVID.
nationally, all the way through.
Okay.
And so again, they're looking for what is our plan, okay? The administration created a plan based on what we believed, based on the conversation that we had had. That's now changed, but now there's no direction. We're trying to get people in, yes. We had a conversation. We tried to get 5 companies to give us both the 1/3 and the whole building. Okay, we're not able to get it in a 2-week time frame. They're backed up. They're backed up because lots of people are doing this. Okay, because of COVID. So, yes, we have 3 things, and we have 3 things that are not comparable. Okay, but I think the question becomes, and this is something again. Paul, you don't want me to rehash things, but we don't have any goals. This board has not set any goals for this year. Okay, we set those. We don't have any strategic plan of things that you're trying to accomplish. Okay, and the goals that the board goals or the objectives that we set, those are done. Okay, we've had limited conversation as far as a new cafeteria with our own staffing and those kind of things. We have the list of other items, the lighting that was taken off. But again, as far as the direction of what the 7 of you are trying to accomplish, I can't say that I know. I can't say that I know. So, again, I mean, you're asking, I disagree with you, Glenn. I understand what you're saying. It's a smaller amount of money, and it's testing for that. But we have a problem. Okay, we know it's a problem. I understand Charlie's point as well. We don't know if this is going to meet some standard as far as what that is. It's significantly better than what it is that we're doing. Okay, and again, there's a lot of time that we're spending on this, and I mean, I would go a step further and say, right now we're not meeting the adequacy standards, right? You should be considering an addition according to the state adequacy standards, because you're not meeting the state adequacy standards either. So we have things that we should be talking about and should be getting done. And, I think Glenn's point was we're not going to level the building and start over again. So what can be done to improve this? Because any other option that's going to get you to a higher grade is basically starting from scratch. You can't use the current ventilators. You can't use the current system. The building is not structurally sound in order to be able to put those units on top. Okay, the piping that would have to be done, you have to block out all of the vents. I mean, so it's major structural changes where what we've talked about and what was presented was, this is the best we can do. We're trying to do this the best we can do under the circumstances that would address, again, safety as far as access to the building, the air conditioning, the electrical, and the ventilation.
So Glenn, the quote that you make a motion and you have a second, that's a 3/3 quote or a 1/3 quote?
1/3.
1/3
That's a 1/3.
for $15,000.
Correct.
Okay. Now, Hera Environmental also is showing, it says 10 random samples in as many rooms, so presumably 10 rooms, and their sum is $3,850. And just my own clarification, what are they going to be doing? What is Edison Energy going to be doing that is more than $15,000 than what Hera would be doing for the $3,850?
As I understand it, Herrick is just a very, very basic evaluation. It's not specific for COVID, air issues, and all those things.
But Edison is.
Edison is.
Okay. Thank you.
Eric is doing air sampling, so that's based the air out of the classroom, catch it, filter, they go to the lab and analyze it. What it doesn't do is test what is your heating and ventilation system doing, filtration wide, volume. And that's why it's so much more expensive to the other system, because they basically got to take things apart and figure out the airflows and filtration.
So then the motion basically is to spend approximately $15,000 to have this 1/3 study done.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
What do we have set aside for the HVAC project?
Sorry?
What do we have set aside in the budget for that HVAC project? Is that, those would be the funds essentially we could do, right?
I don't remember what the number was. Remember what that number was, Aaron? The number that was set aside for the air conditioning? It was money that was put in the capital reserve.
I think it's about 400,000.
That's what I think so.
So it's at least 15,000.
Yeah,
Oh,
significant,
yeah.
significant.
Yeah, it was substantially more than the 15,000. Substantially. Any other discussion? Okay, Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Griswold,
Yes.
Ms. Caramucci,
Yes.
Ms. Christie,
Yes.
Mr. Underwood, Mr. Tooper,
Yes.
and yes. Okay, any other unfinished business?
You want to do a motion?
Yep.
Bring the attorney.
You wanted to bring it?
Well, yeah,
You don't need a motion for that. You're able to pull the attorney at any time. So,
yeah, but you had mentioned, Glenn, in all due respect, you mentioned just the executive session. I would like him to attend public session as well.
As long as you understand that he's not going to speak necessarily in a public session. He can listen.
Okay.
You can't ask him any questions in the public session.
You would probably answer it. The question is, it's $175 an hour.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. At what cost does this come to us to have an attorney come and sit in our meeting?
Why couldn't, no, and this is just a question because I don't know the answer. Why couldn't we ask him, the members of the board, ask him questions in the public session?
he can give opinions on specifics.
Right.
You can't give legal advice.
He can't give you opinions on other legal matters.
Well, no, not that are in process, and I fully understand it. Litigation and personnel, obviously he can't give opinions, but if there are other questions that some of us may have, that I certainly have, I'd like to ask him those questions in public. For as long as he's going to be here for both sessions, then I don't need a motion. But if he's only going to be here for the executive session, I am prepared to make a motion to have him here. I haven't seen him yet. He has not attended any meetings, and that's unusual, because even when I, from time to time, did attend board meetings, the board attorney was here for the entire meeting.
That was a practice that was discontinued at the recommendation of the county office based on the legal fees that they had for having somebody come and sit and attend for all of those meetings. It's the reason that we reduced the legal bills for that aspect of it, for the meetings. And it's the reason that they call in to executive session to speak with you, or they give you something in writing that explains whatever it is, something, typically with the policy, that's what they would do. They would give you an analysis of the policy.
So Glenn, in all due respect to yourself, and I don't expect the motion to pass, but I'm perfectly willing to make a motion that if Mr. Camigno for $175 an hour, I think that's a really good deal, because I thought it was $255. So I'm perfectly willing to move forward with a motion if you feel I should do so, even if it may fail, and I presume that it will.
I have, well, it's just kind of, short version is I absolutely, regardless of whether he's here or not, I'm going to ask for the policies to be sent in for their opinion, for his office's opinion on the two policies.
It has to be, right?
What's that?
It has to be.
Yeah, it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I mean, that won't be an issue. Paul, is there understanding what it is that
Absolutely,
in terms of eyeballing them and that concern.
sure.
But I mean, are there specific questions that I could, speak to you, you tell me what the questions are, I put them
Well,
right?
yeah, we have a difference of opinion from the opinion that you gave. This is on the bylaws. And there's nothing against you, Glenn, but you ask me your questions, I'm gonna give you a direct answer. This motion, according to your thoughts, because there were 4 abstentions, the motion failed. Even though there were 3 people who voted yes, the motion failed in your estimation. And I'm not challenging your legal credentials, but that's one of the questions that I have for Mr. Knight.
So my question to you is it would you be satisfied if you identified the various questions you have? They were sent to the attorneys and the attorneys gave us written responses, which would be less consuming. They live.
That's not even a legal question. That would be something for school boards that you could just ask.
Well, I disagree with the response, so I would
We
appreciate.
understand. We
Yes.
understand the premise.
Mhm.
That's fine. We have a differing of opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
It
you
has
can
nothing to do. Listen, they don't teach abstentions in law school. Okay, so it doesn't have to do with anything with regard to legal opinions or not.
Right.
But Paul,
My
for that-
question is very straightforward. Okay. Would you be satisfied with written responses to questions like that? That could then either be put to our attorney, who would charge us to answer them, or to New Jersey school boards, depending upon the nature of the question that you're
But
answering.
why would you ask a lawyer a question that you can contact New Jersey school boards for free and get the answer to? You're not gonna ask a lawyer a question that they don't have the answer to.
Well,
That's
they
not
would have
following.
it, but we would have to pay them. The whole point is that Donna can make a phone call tomorrow and say there's a challenge on this as far as these 4 abstentions.
Correct.
And have an
You
answer.
your answer, Paul.
Oh, I want the answer with the documentation behind the answer. I'm not gonna be satisfied if he says, oh yeah, sure, no problem. 4
So then
abstentions.
ask for something in writing then, I'm sure Donna can get that.
My question
No.
remains, can I just have a second with no other input from anybody other than Paul's response? Would written responses to your questions, whatever source they might be adequate, or do you need the body?
I need one.
Okay,
That's the
Then you need to make a
straightforward
motion.
answer. I'm not gonna beat around the shrubbery.
that's fine.
But that's, again, I realize I'm 1 of 7. And I realize that I'm probably not in the majority on this one, but for $175 an hour, I think it's a worthwhile investment. That's my own person. Since we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees over the years, $175 an hour, in my opinion, and as I said, I thought it was $255. So
Okay, so Paul makes a motion to have Mr. Comegno attend the next meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Baumann. Is there any further discussion?
Mike, I'm just going to raise one point. We follow Robert's Rules of Order. You can open the book and find the answer.
I did, and I wasn't satisfied with it.
Well, then it doesn't matter because it's going to come back to, the attorney's going to ask us, which rules do you go by? We're going to say Robert's Rules of Order. He's going to refer to the book and read it to you.
Well, there are other questions, Charlie, in addition to Robert's Rules of Order, that I would like to be able to ask our attorney, as I used to do, and I keep coming back to the township committee. That's where that attorney used to answer a lot of although related to the township committee stuff. But I had open access to the attorney for the township committee. I have no access to the Board of Education committee.
That's because this is a school board and not a township committee.
Well,
The only 2 people who have access to our attorneys are me and Mr. Capone.
and I understand that, that's in the bylaws. And
Right, there you go. Okay, so there's a motion to bring Mr. Comegno to the meeting so Paul can ask him some questions. I'm kidding about the last one. There's a motion to bring Mr. Comegno to the meeting. There's a motion to bring Mr. Comegno to the meeting. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Would we be able to put that like at the beginning of the agenda? So that way we got him less time, he can go once we're done asking questions. I mean, it would say it was a
I
couple bucks.
can guarantee you that, well, I mean, actually, I suppose it's up to Paul, since, because he wants the guy at the meeting. it would be my suggestion that if we're gonna do this, yeah, we bring him in, have him come to the executive session, deal with him immediately outside as part of the CSA report, and then he goes on his way and he doesn't sit through the rest of the meeting.
Okay.
Nobody should have to suffer through this any more than the seven of us.
And this is in person, right? Because COVID numbers are rising, and we want him here. Being on the phone is not adequate.
Karen,
During,
there's a motion and a
we
second.
got it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Fallon,
Yes.
Mr. Brisley,
Yes.
Ms. Caramucci,
No.
Ms. Christmas,
Yes.
Mr. Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Abstain.
and I'll abstain, but it passes. So we will invite him. I will invite him. Any other discussion? Any other unfinished business?
Anything about the meal program?
Oh, yeah, the unfinished or new business, because I would like to find a way to get the meals to the students who qualify, and we're getting the delivery program. I'd like to find a way to get that to them.
And I agree.
Separate from the grab and go that I voted for. I would like to find a way to ensure that those families that were in need, have been in need, and were being serviced can continue to get the food that they were getting.
The operative word is restore. I'm not looking to pay $100,000 because that's not what we were paying before. Just to restore that program, which is still, and it really irritates me, it's still on the website that says that the four of us voted to discontinue. I want to restore the program that allegedly we voted to discontinue, which we did not. I will state that very firmly. We did not vote to discontinue any program. That apparently was done unilaterally. So if you're going to make a motion to,
Well, I have the same issue I had last week
Mhm.
and probably the meeting before that. Do we know what the cost would be to have both programs?
So we added the program, so that it's not just to restore it. Well, I see where you're coming from, but we added the program. So when you add something, you have to make sure that we have the coverage. And the problem that Mr. Capone is saying is that we don't have the coverage right now for both programs. We have to find a way to be able to make both programs happen. Correct?
Didn't we talk about this last time? I'm looking at the minutes from last meeting. So it says, you were gonna request more information on this motion from Mr. Capone for the next meeting.
So again, we started in the CSA report, you can hire a part-time person.
Yeah.
You can make the current person full-time, which is significantly more expensive because of the full-time, and that's what it's gonna take in order to run this program where you're going to do deliveries and provide the rest of it.
that's what we had before. Before the vote that occurred, where allegedly I voted to discontinue the program, that's what we had before. My suggestion was we use the same budget for that part of the program that was already in place. I'm not adding anything, but it's just restoring it so that that reference is going to come off the website.
Okay, we're gonna, listen, we can talk about the website, okay, I understand, let your blood pressure go down just a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay? So, but here's the thing, right? You had a program by which meals were brought to people in need,
Absolutely.
okay?
Yes.
The program that was then enacted and adopted was a grab and go. Grab and go does not equal deliver,
I understand that.
okay?
Yes.
To do a grab and go and a deliver costs more than just deliver,
Okay,
or just grab and go.
right, understand.
So when we had deliver
Mm-hmm,
and it was changed to grab and go, the cost remained approximately the same.
okay,
If we now, and I'll use your word, we've got a grab and go.
mm-hmm,
We now want to restore the
Correct.
deliver.
mm-hmm,
We need, as a board, we would need to essentially say, okay, we will commit essentially the same amount of money. So it means either hiring a part-time person or making the one person full-time,
mm-hmm.
which personally I think is a horrible idea.
Yes, it is. I agree.
So, and then by doing that, now at least you've got the backbone to do both programs.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Okay, so my motion is to hire a part-time person so we can restore the delivery meals for the students and families that were in need.
I'll second that.
Well, wait,
Wait, you need
please,
a
I'm
motion and a
sorry,
second.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna second.
There you go.
Discussion.
My problem is, why is it any different than hiring a part-timer, and making the part-timer we do have full-time?
Benefits.
Cost
If,
more.
if for nothing else, benefits.
We have hired a lot of staff in the last few meetings that I'm just not and I mean this with all due respect, I'm not understanding how we do not have the staff to help with this program.
Because they're teaching, albeit virtually.
What about the paraprofessionals that we hired?
We had a conversation earlier in executive session, and if you want to continue this conversation, you really need to move back to executive session.
So there's a motion and a second to hire a part-time person for home delivery, for food to families in need, people who qualify for the,
Therefore, we would have two separate programs running.
correct.
The grab and go and the delivery program would be restored. That's my recommendation.
We're talking delivery of free and reduced.
Correct. And the grab and go will continue as it has been.
Pick up at the door over here with the cafeteria.
Do we have staffing in place to continue the grab and go now if we change nothing? Are there enough resources to continue that?
So we have, I guess, pulling other people from other jobs. That's how we would be covering it currently, based on current circumstances. They have other job duties that they're assigned to that they would have to be pulled to continue.
So we don't even have a
Correct.
full half-time person doing this, we've got it spread out. We will have it spread out.
Would it help if we did just delivery then?
To everybody, I think that would be very costly, no? I mean, is that even an option? I mean, it's an option, but at what cost?
Well, there's no way to identify the number of hours that you're going to be looking at, but based on the numbers that we have. Again, I mean, you're looking at we saw an initial 100% increase, and now we're back to,
50%.
albeit different, it's back to the 100%, but with basically an 80% reduction in free and reduced families.
Whoever runs our children's program here in the building has to have a background check. Correct?
Correct.
I volunteer my fellow board members, we all have background checks.
You're not allowed to do that.
Any other discussion? Mr. Baumann?
I think we got enough staff, so I'm gonna say no.
Mr. Breslin?
Yes.
Ms. Scaramucci?
Yes.
Ms. Christman?
Say,
Sorry, I'm gonna lose track of the map. Mr. Underwood? Mr. Toofer?
Yes.
So there's 3 yeses, 2 abstentions.
No.
I'm going to vote yes with this caveat. Come June, when we're, again, a new analysis. If this program has lost the $40,000 to $60,000 that Mr. Capone indicated it might, based on what the other program did, I'm going to call out the other 3 yeses and say, told you so. But I'm going to vote yes, just because I think it might be the right thing to do, and I'll risk that $40,000.
Thank you.
This is enabling the people who were in need from the get-go to continue to get the food that they need based on the fact that those are the people right now that are not getting it. And I'm not okay with that.
I'm not okay with that either, but I'm not sure that hiring additional staff.
Well, if there's COVID, there's a lot of stuff going on, the numbers keep increasing, and I have a feeling that things are gonna keep changing. But what we have to do is what's in the best interest of the students, and I'm not okay with people who need food not getting it. And if that comes with some fiscal responsibility, I am solely for that, but I feel that those children need it. I'm sorry, that's what I feel.
Okay. Any other unfinished business? Hearing none, new business.
I have a motion, Mr. President. The motion is to resume virtual meetings effective with our next meeting unless specifically forbidden by New Jersey statutes as provided to each Board of Education member. I know a meeting ago or whatever, when I raised the question, I said, oh, no, it's illegal, you can't do that. I want to see it in writing, and I personally will get as far in the governor's office as I possibly can, because that's absurd. And the governor has been quite adamant about not having, in-person meetings. And now we're going to say, oh, the governor is against it. Well, if one of his people is against it, the governor should know about it. So I want to see whatever documentation there is, not just to meet Paul Breslin, but each of the 7 members of our board. I want to see that documentation because personally, I don't believe it exists.
Are you done grandstanding?
Okay. Yes.
Is there a second to the motion?
I
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Now, Mr. Capone.
So you passed the policy to have a virtual policy, right? Executive orders that came out in March set forward that you needed to do this, but there was no practice associated, no logistics. Then it came out after you passed this policy, and according to the regulations, which you were given, your policy is not acceptable.
I want to see that in writing.
Okay.
You're citing that verbally, Mr. Capone. I want to see it in writing.
Okay. My point is this.
The difficulty isn't that, just so we're clear, right? It isn't that you're not allowed to have virtual meetings.
Okay?
The rules that they put in place to have virtual meetings makes it impossible for Montague to have virtual meetings. That's my personal, not professional, interpretation of the stuff that I was given and that I read. Okay, because it was handed to each of us and I read it. And my understanding is there are requirements placed by the state of New Jersey if you have virtual meetings
Mm-hmm.
that we cannot accommodate as a board.
I'd like to see, again, Glenn, nothing,
No,
but I'd like to see it in writing.
It's fine.
And in continuing my grandstanding, I will contact Steve Oraho, I will contact Parker Space, and I will contact Cal Arts.
I would suggest that you get it in writing and read it before you contact us.
Okay.
So
Because again, it may be on us as opposed to on them.
Okay.
my point would be this, you have a policy.
But we're not using it. You're telling me that.
I'm telling you, you can't. That's what I'm telling you.
Well,
You
you change the
can't
policy.
use, that's exactly the point that I
If you
made.
come up with a policy, that's legal, Mr. Capone.
It's not-
I don't make policy,
You
Paul.
do.
The board does.
Okay, we can make suggestions.
And we went through this the last time, and I told you, you needed to change the policy. And what have you done with that policy since? Nothing.
What have you
So now
suggested?
here is the circumstance where you didn't do anything with the policy. Don't blame me for your inaction.
What do you recommend? Put it in writing.
I recommend that as a board, you create a policy that meets the regulations set forward
I'm not
by
going to suggest
the
anything
governor.
for that.
That's what I'm gonna suggest.
What was the reasoning behind why we used policy?
Because they set parameters of things that you had to do that your policy is not compliant with.
Which are in writing, Mr. President, and
They are.
I would be happy to review that. And as a board member, I would be happy to submit a revised policy.
My comment on this current motion, if this motion should pass, we immediately have to go back to, not directly Mr. Plotsky, to invite the attorney into a meeting, because we won't be here.
No. I'm suggesting, I use the word resume.
So you said starting next
Next
meeting.
meeting.
Yeah, but to resume the virtual meetings for the public, for the benefit of the
Oh,
public.
for the public.
I
make it clear.
agree with Mark's, I think it was Mark who said that. That he's, so,
You don't want us to meet virtually,
We
you
thought
want
you
us
meant
to meet.
no, the
I
public,
meant the public.
I apologize. Yeah, I was so fired
That
up.
was a
I apologize.
misunderstanding.
No, that was basically to follow Mark's recommendation. I thought it was a great recommendation, so I'm kind of working with that, with Mark's recommendation as a member of the public to make a motion.
So now there's a motion to resume virtual meetings to the public, in other words, broadcasting.
Yeah.
So that Mr. Krebs can stay home and just watch it.
The meetings virtual.
You guys pulled them down, so you take them down so we can't go back. and watch
If
it
we
again.
can allow the public here at the same time, which apparently we can, I don't have a problem with that. It's not a 100% public, virtual public meeting. It's allowing both. If members of the public, like they're here today, if they want to be here next meeting, fine. But there's a lot of people who are not here because they don't want to subject
And
themselves.
I get that, but I just want to reiterate too, like if at any point something happens,
Mhm.
somebody's always at the school, so you can call or email. You don't necessarily have to wait for a meeting. I agree with what, Mr. Krebs is saying, because it seems restrictive, right? Because if somebody wants to comment, but they don't feel safe going out,
Mhm.
but problem solution, email the school, contact the school, and you might get an answer that way also. You don't have to wait for a board meeting. We all have board emails. If there's something that, somebody needs to reach out, we're here and available at any time.
But there-
I just want to remind people that.
And just for clarification, the reason that we did the broadcasting previously was because the governor said 10 people max.
Mhm.
And basically, if we exclude the couple of people from the public who are here, we're at or over 10, all by our lonesomes. So there's a motion and a second. I'm going to announce my vote before I make it. I'm going to abstain because I don't think we can legally do it. But if we can, I'd have no objection to changing that to a yes once I can confirm that we can legally do it. So I'll call the vote. Mr. Baumann?
No.
Mr. Brislin?
Yes.
Ms. Caramucci?
No, it's working.
So we're not sure if it can be legally
Yeah,
Glenn, the individual, I don't know if it's legal based upon what I remember reading several weeks or months ago when the notice came out about what's required to essentially have a virtual or to transmit your meeting and have the public participate. Like, I have some recollection, one of the rules is you have to be able to see the person who's speaking as well as them seeing you.
Just saying, if I vote yes, is the vote gonna come back to me that I voted for something illegal? So now,
Well, right, you
I don't know, listen, I don't know what to tell you. I'm abstaining because I don't know what the rule is. And I'm just not comfortable with it.
Does your policy that you wrote not state that you can't have executive sessions virtually?
Well, for sure, you can't have executive session.
That's so, there may be a way, but the way your policy's written now, if I remember correctly, you cannot have executive session at a virtual meeting. That would mean if we continue to do meetings the way we're doing them tonight, that you would have no executive sessions. That's what I remember the policy that you
Yeah, but
revised.
we're just talking about the public being able to.
I understand that part too. That part is something we can work around.
To be honest, I stand behind every vote I make. So if I hesitate, it's because I have a question and I'm not just gonna make a vote. And I've been ostracized times too, or whatever you wanna call it. I don't care. I vote ethically the way that I wanna vote. And Facebook can bash me for it. I don't really care. I'm here for the reasons that I'm here for.
Okay,
So I
so
don't understand what I'm voting for right now. I need more clarification before I can make a decision.
When can you provide clarification for?
I understand.
If there's a legal issue with it, I don't wanna vote on it.
My understanding is that the vote is to broadcast the meeting
Absolutely.
so that people can see it.
Yes.
And to permit, I guess, telephonic access during the public comment session. So
Public
I think that's where
participation.
there's a problem.
We did it before. I'd like to see that in writing saying we have to discontinue that.
It's not acceptable according to the regulations that went out. You have a copy of it. We gave it to you when we discussed this the last time. Okay, so the problem that you're talking about is the executive sessions. Okay, there's a conflict with that policy.
Correct, that I
In
understand.
addition to that, you have to be able to broadcast the people. Okay, they can't call in by the telephone anymore. That's
Okay.
not permissible.
So then my vote is no.
Sorry, I wish this was Scotch. Daniel Chrisman,
Abstain.
Billy Underwood, Mr. Tooper,
No.
and no. Well, no, I said I was going to abstain. I'll abstain. Vote does not pass. Any other new business?
So we gotta keep coming.
Mark, you have
If
to
you
keep
want to see
going.
the meetings, apparently.
So the way we were doing it before was not, I'm understanding.
Yeah, but the rulings came out after.
So it's changed. So it was okay then, it's no longer okay.
They gave us no guidance in March. The guidance didn't come back. And actually, if you remember, the wording that we got from the attorney was something like, it's now been 6 months later, and now they've provided guidance. And all of these districts were doing things in a way that didn't meet the new requirements and guidance. That's the problem with your policy. Your policy does not mirror that. Okay, so you have to fix your policy to do whatever it's going to do as far as matching that.
Wonderful. Can I make a motion that we look at that policy for the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
And that motion is that it will be emailed to us, right?
That's,
If he claims the door
Why
gave it to us.
don't we do this, Paul? Mr. Capone, could you please send all board members a copy of our current policy relative to electronic meetings, as well as the directives from the state that we received, whenever we received them, and the board had given us, but send them to us again, please.
For virtual policies, or you're saying all policies?
no, the virtual.
Virtual policy and the governor's or the government rule with regard to electronic meetings.
I would like to make a motion that we address this at the next meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Okay, so that would be called new business at the next meeting, or finished business at the next meeting. No motion required. Next.
Okay, also, Mr. President, there used to be, up until a couple of months ago, there was a list on our website of the administrative staff as well as their contact information. That several months ago was removed. I'm going to make a motion that that list of administrative staff be restored so the public can contact members of the administrative staff. It was on there for the longest time, and then a couple months ago, it disappeared.
I'll second that to open the discussion.
There's a motion and a second.
Discussion.
Why hasn't it disappeared?
Because when there were changes to the numbers of the people and who the contacts were, it was pulled down while it was being updated. It would easily be put a thing. I would actually say that this is not within the purview of the board. This is just really a conversation.
That was actually going to be
Because this
my
is actually
discussion.
micromanagement of the district, and your job is not to administer the district.
So when will it be done, Mr. Capone?
That would be micromanagement.
Okay.
But I presume since it's being discussed,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be in relatively short order.
Okay.
Any other unfinished business?
We've got an open motion and second right now.
No, actually, I'm delegating that as it's not within the purview of the board. It's not something I want the board to consider.
Okay.
I wouldn't ordinarily do that, but I'd really hate for the board to take like basically an illegal action against all of us right now.
I'm just gonna table it.
Well, you have a motion in a second.
I motion to table it.
I
Okay.
second.
Motion to table by Mr. Tuber and second by Ms. Caramucci. Any other discussion? Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Bristol?
Yes.
Ms. Caramucci?
Yes.
Ms. Christmas?
Yes.
Mr. Underwood? Mr. Tuber?
Yes.
And yes. It's tabled. I got it just on the way with it, but okay.
We got too far.
Any other unfinished business?
Oh, it's new business.
Okay, any other new business?
All of us always new business.
Absolutely. And Mr. President, this is just a question for yourself as far as access to the members of the board.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Access to the members of the board. Let's see, if someone wanted to contact you in your capacity as our president, are we at liberty? Am I at liberty? Consistent with the conflict of interest or whatever, code of ethics, am I at liberty to give your Gmail account to people who request that of me?
Okay, so I have 5 different emails.
No,
Somebody, I understand, if somebody wants to contact me with regard to Board of Education business, it's BOE G Plotsky at MontagueSchool.org. Is that right?
Yes.
I think that's right. BOE G Plotsky at MontagueSchool.org. Anybody can email me at that. I thought you were going to ask if you had my permission to give out my cell phone number.
No,
And I was going to say only if you want your legs broken.
no, I know that.
Okay, fair
I'm
enough.
not going to take the risk. Okay. But okay, having said that, the next related question, would you have an objection to having that BOE email, the Gmail address put on the website?
No.
All of ours are there.
I think they're all on there. Or they
I couldn't
should.
find it.
Fine. Yeah, no, I have,
So you're
I
not
personally certainly have no objection. That's
I
what
thought
said.
they were on there, honestly. They're not. They used to be.
I used to be, yes. They're not anymore.
Okay.
So in your opinion,
Mr. Capone, without telling you how to do your job or anything like that, or even approaching that, if you wouldn't mind putting my email address back on it.
what about the rest of us?
But only if you write ill, no. It's fine. You should put all of it.
They're not our individual email addresses.
They don't belong to me.
Education.
Right, it's the Board of Education, yeah.
Board. That's how they're listed right now.
Right.
So that, again, we've taken steps to make sure that everybody was getting the same information at the same time. Because of, again, we've dead horse, but there were complaints that certain people had certain information, others did not. So for transparency among the 7 board members, it's board, so if it's going to that board email, like the one that came in today, everybody has it.
Okay, can we also, when I checked the other night, 2 nights ago, the www.montaguenj, no, that's the website. But there is an email for the school that's not on the website either. So if somebody wants to email a general, the school email address, that, I see, I don't understand why that's not posted on the board website. On the school website, not the board website, but the school website.
What do you mean, like a general email?
Yeah, we do have a general email for the school, for Montague School. I think that's also a Gmail address as well.
I don't know what you're referencing. Who would get a general email at the school?
There may have been in the past.
Well, it's BOE at montagueschool.org.
So that would be the board.
That's right. The general email, the BOE at montagueschool.org.
And we've already said that that will be on there
That's gonna
along
be
with
okay.
all of ours.
That is on there.
That's how we got that email.
That's how you
was
got
it
that
not?
email.
Yeah, the email that we got from that parent was there.
Yeah.
I just don't want people to think that they have to wait for a meeting, or that there are ways to reach out to us if you have questions or concerns. There's ways.
Right,
To
absolutely.
let us
But,
know.
but the other thing that should be said, Mr. President, is that if somebody emails me,
Yes.
it is as likely as not that I'm gonna end up having to
Sharing.
forward the email to Mr. Capone or to somebody else in the building, because it's not within my purview as a
Right.
board member or as a board president. I mean, I would certainly respond to the person saying, I'm forwarding your email to the appropriate person. They, the public should be made aware that we do a lot, but we're supposed to be operating at 40,000 feet, setting policy, and, we don't administer the district, we don't do that stuff. If you have an issue between your child and the teacher, none of the people on this board should have anything to do with that, other than possibly forwarding the information to Mr. Capone. So just so that that's out there as well.
But if you pick up expired food, posting it on Facebook doesn't do anything. Or if the food was supposedly expired, I would think you would contact the school, which Ms. Rekovic said did not happen. I'm a problem solution type person. Facebook isn't going to fix that, whether it was legit or not legit. Contacting the school directly is the steps that you would need to take.
Mr. President, what else?
Okay, just to confirm, just to qualify, you would prefer, Mr. President, that if somebody were to call and say, how can I contact the board? Correct me if I'm wrong, rather than giving out your specific Gmail account, you would suggest that I use BOE@montagueschool.org.
If they want to contact the board, they should do the BOE at.
Okay,
If they want to contact me, they should do G Plotsky.
so you know, okay, very good.
Well, actually, it's BOE G Plotsky at montagueschool.org.
Okay.
I have to keep reminding myself.
Mr. President, thank you, that's all I have for this meeting.
Is there anything else for this meeting?
Yeah, so again, the current practice is if it goes to the board, that you all get. Is the request that you're all listed separately so that only certain ones of you will get emails, or is this something that is to go to the board? That's 2 completely separate things. Either you want people to be able to handpick who they're speaking to, or they're speaking to the board in general. And the board in general, as you have alluded to, they should be contacting the school list because, again, the board only acts minus an administrative solution.
Well, in answer to Mr. Capone's question, I've been asked both ways. And I hesitated giving out any contact information because when I went to the school website, it wasn't there as of 3 or 4 days ago when I checked it. But at this point, if somebody asks for the president, with your permission, I'll give him your email address, the Board of Education, the Gmail account, If somebody says, well, I want to write a letter to the full board, then obviously I'll give them the other one, but it was not on the website. Neither Gmail address was on the website.
Right.
As of Sunday, November 15th, it was up there because that's when this was sent.
On the website?
That's how I would imagine she got this.
It's on there right now under Board of Education.
Yeah, and it says right here, to
Contact-
BOE@montagueschool.org.
All right, any other new business? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 9 PM.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Belmont, second by Mr. Tuber. Sorry, Mr. Underwood. Any discussion? Thank you all for attending. Have a very happy and safe Thanksgiving. If you could avoid it, don't travel, and we'll see you in December. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Have a good night.